do this. We'll get started. So really excited to chat with you all today. So my name's Luke Triglaine, talking to you today about the story we have here at Thomas, which is from BI to AI. So we've got a lot of stuff we want to cover. Very excited to be here. So if clicker works. So in terms of the agenda for today, so I'll give you a bit of a background in terms of what did Thomas need to achieve with data, to give a bit of context into our journey, which will then anchor into the how and why of why we started our data journey and why we went on the migration from Snowflake to Databricks. Give a bit of an overview in terms of where we are now with BI, and ultimately how these set a great foundation for us to build some really powerful AI functionality we want to show you at the end as well. So the vanity slide of who the hell am I and why am I talking to you today? So my name's Dr. Luke. I've got a bit of a strange background, a bit of an unusual person, I imagine, speaking at these events. I'm actually a personality and social psychologist. So I spent a lot of my career studying who we are as individuals and how we operate as groups. I did my PhD specializing in AI applications of that, how we understand ourselves, how we understand other people. And I kind of defected, I kind of jokingly say, to data science over 3 years ago, but I've been working in the AI and machine learning space for quite a while now. In terms of then introducing Thomas, so Thomas has got quite a long legacy, so it's a 45-year-old company. And as a business, it's all around understanding people, applying psychology to the workplace, whether that's understanding yourselves, building better teams, identifying better leaders. And we work in a whole bunch of different countries, a whole bunch of different languages. And the latest kind of positioning for Thomas is how we combine people science with ethical AI so we can help to build products that are ultimately accurate, actionable, and safe. So I'm going to talk a little bit around that positioning as well. So in terms of setting the scene, so hopefully this will give a context as to the problems Thomas are trying to solve with data and why we went on our journey. So ultimately, quick show of hands, how many people are full-time, either remote or hybrid working? I think that is nearly everyone. So really exciting. COVID obviously forced a big change for us in that regard. It had a lot of positive impact. There's a really interesting challenge for us as humans, because as we're more remote, as we're working more digitally, what does this mean for how we collaborate, how we communicate, and ultimately, how do we connect with each other? How do we connect with our teams and the work we do? So at Thomas, we believe that building sustainable and profitable companies starts with having a company where people feel they can contribute and they feel they can be productive, which starts when people feel that they're thriving and they're engaged, which starts when they feel connected to their team, which starts when people feel trusted and respected. And at Thomas, we believe all of that starts with a deep understanding and awareness of yourself and of other people. And so that's really where we play as Thomas. So people science is our superpower. So trying to understand our profiles, to understand ourselves, our colleagues, and our teams better. So story time. So that's a bit about Thomas. So as I say, Thomas is 45 years old now. So it was a family-owned organization in a tiny town in the UK called Marlow. And for a long time, it was a consultancy-based business. So they go into an organization, we train you up, we'd almost give you the Lego blocks and say, we're gonna teach you how to use all these tools. You go off and you build this concept yourselves. 6.5 years ago, they were acquired by a private equity company, which led to all sorts of changes and all sorts of transformations. We had to go through the digital transformation to build a SaaS product, the self-serve, kind of all the buzzwords you'd expect when engaging with private equity. That's where we went. So as we started to go on that journey and build a more digital-first product, it became deeply apparent to us how important data was going to be for that. We need to know what people were doing, when they were doing it, so ultimately we could understand what value we were driving, where, when, and why, so we could give our customers more of what they loved. So that was the backdrop. So this was pre-2019, when I inherited our data engineering, data infrastructure remit. This was our data stack. And there's nothing inherently wrong with this data stack, but we were a very small team, and what we found very quickly was there was a lot of stuff where we just weren't sure how to fully leverage the power of the data we had. So with this backdrop, our kind of ultimate impressions for this were, at the time, there was no natural home for data science. So there's no place for us to test, deploy, monitor data features. Everything we had in that was also SQL only. All of our data scientists spoke Python and R. There was no real way for them to kind of get the most value out of that. The infrastructure wasn't really built for collaboration either. So we paid for a lot of streaming data that we couldn't get into Snowflake. We had a limited number of licenses, which meant there was a weird gatekeeping thing of you had to call someone up and ask them to do a pipeline change. It was just a lot of handover that didn't work. And ultimately, it wasn't integrated with our tech and our engineering stack, which led to an attitude from our engineers, which is, well, Data's not our problem, that's your problem. You own the data stack, it's got nothing to do with how we're building the product. So if it all goes wrong, that's on you. You need to be able to sort it out. So that was kind of the background for that. What we needed then, when we were looking at the data stack and what we wanted to evolve it to, we wanted to unlock our data potential. So we wanted to be able to use data in real time more. We had a very small team. I will also joke, I am inherently lazy. So I wanted to use fewer tools and ultimately do more with them. And ultimately wanted something that empowered and enabled our data science there. I'm also, I came from a kind of culture previously where data was very gate kept. It was all about, okay, we're the data engineers, we're the specialists, we're the ones who are in charge of it. I didn't want to bring that attitude again. So what I wanted to do was have a tech stack that allowed more people to get really hands-on with our data, because we thought that was going to be what really unlocked that power for us. And ultimately, with that, getting more people hands-on, we needed a system and a software that had better security and control, better access controls, and ultimately allowed our engineering teams to be closer on that journey with us. In terms of our migration, these were the 3 metrics we looked at in terms of evaluating any tool we wanted to migrate to. So the first was cost neutrality. I'll be very candid with you. Our CFO really didn't like us before we went on this migration journey. We were spending a lot on data, and they could not see the value from it. So the first thing they said was, any change you do, we're not spending any more money than we currently do. So a big part of this was, how do we deliver value and be cost neutral? Then for us as a team, the 2 next big bits were, how do we make this simpler to use? Because we had a big remit and we wanted to have a big impact, simply. And ultimately, we need to be able to do more with less. So going beyond just traditional BI and be able to have an impact on that data science capability. This is our migration. So we actually did our migration in 3 weeks from Snowflake to Databricks. I would not recommend that, but I'm a tale of that you can possibly do that if you choose to move that quickly. A bit of a timeline as to what we did. We engaged in October of 22 to do the proof of concept. So some very clear metrics around, we want to see if we can work with data in real time. That was a really big, important part for us. We did a kind of 2-week proof of concept, moved very quickly with that with the support of Databricks. In November, we then presented to our board and said, we want to move a whole bunch of resource over from one tool to another. They ultimately didn't mind that much because, again, the cost neutrality bit, we said, it's fine, on the balance sheet, it's all going to come out as the same amount of numbers, so they were okay with that. Importantly, in the opening week of January, we knew we had to move quickly. And one of the really important parts of this was planning out and mapping all of our pipelines we needed to replicate. So we went through Matillion, went through Snowflake, we went through Data Factory, looked at everything and evaluated what was really driving the biggest impact for our internal users and our customers, and prioritized those and replicated those first. The other big bit we did on that week was communicating with stakeholders and saying, by the end of January, we're going to need to do something. We're going to need to unplug from Snowflake. Here is what we're going to mitigate. Here's how we're going to manually support if everything does go wrong. And again, the reason we had to do it by the end of January, that's when we renewed with Snowflake. We had to get it done before that. Otherwise, our CFO probably would have maimed me if we didn't do that. So that was a really big part for us. So we managed to replicate all of our pipelines in 1 week. Again, it was so quick because we were able to do it in the language we were comfortable with in SQL and Python. In the second week, it was all around QA testing against Snowflake and making sure we had the right data there. Our BI tool is also ThoughtSpot. So one of the big bits then was, how do we unplug ThoughtSpot from Snowflake and replug it back into Databricks? So we created another instance of it. So again, we could do the QA checks and move it across. In that final week of January, we did the QA for ThoughtSpot and our data products QA. We didn't plan to migrate data products, but we were able to move with such speed, we decided to do that as well. And then come the end of January, it worked. We unplugged everything from Snowflake. I also decided not to tell anyone we did that, to see if anyone would notice. And the only comment I got was, have you improved something because everything's a lot quicker now? Which is a really, really positive bit of feedback for us and a really great story for how our migration went. So this is our data stack now. So we have a group of data sources from our product and third party that we're pulling into our data lake that we have on Azure. And we're using Databricks as a data intelligence platform. It's that one-stop shop for everything we're looking to do. And what you can also see is from there, it's layering onto our data lake, and we're pushing out to our self-serve BI tools. We're building productionized data and AI features. We can talk a bit about that in a second as well. And we're doing product and data analytics within Databricks as well, and working in our product cross-functional teams with our product managers and our engineers and our UX designers to experiment in there. So in terms of how it stacked up, so we'll share the slides with you, but I'll kind of go over these quite quickly. In terms of costs, The big bit was we went from a situation where we had no visibility, no insight. All of our costs were really dispersed in loads of different tools all over the place. We're now at a place where everything is very consolidated into one place. If any of you have to deal with CFOs, this is awesome for that, because you go, here is the one place where we can, at the top line, look at our data costs as an infrastructure, and then are able to break it down very clearly against it. We were cost neutral, but we're able to generate net new value. And in terms of where we want to go, there's a bit around optimizing our SQL warehouses, and we want to continue moving into the serverless functionality. So we've got some workflows that aren't serverless. We want to move them to serverless because, again, helps us consolidate it all under the Databricks roof. In terms of pipelines, so this is where we're talking around the simplicity. For us, the pipelines were the big part of that. Our old systems were really infrequent, really high costs. I don't think they do it now, but the tool we use for ETL, we had to turn a virtual machine on to be able to access it, which meant we had to plan loads in advance before we could actually do the work, because we were racking up dollars upon dollars upon dollars just to make edits. It was a really an uncompatible system for how we wanted to work and the pace we wanted to work. We're now at a point where we're ingesting more data than we ever had through DLT. Our pipelines are collaborative because all of our teams work on it and get involved with it. We also then build specialist pipelines in Python because there's some data products that SQL wasn't working for us, and Python was the best way to do that. In terms of where we're going, talked a bit about it before, serverless DLT again. We're trying to push more as well into the quarantining place, so putting in checks to when data's coming through of a poor quality, we can quarantine it, look at it without disrupting the pipeline entirely. We're also looking around the idea of DLT with vector indexes with LLMs and LLMOps. I'll talk a bit about that again later. But again, the platform we have, foundation we have with Databricks allows us to move rapidly with this. And finally, time to value. So in terms of where we were, building new pipelines was a ridiculously long process to do. Because as I say, we had limited licenses. We had to call someone up and get permission and go through a whole bunch of stuff, and it was just a nightmare. And we ultimately had no space to experiment and test. The bit that's underneath me getting subtitled is also, because we were working on some things locally, some things in certain other platforms, there wasn't alignment in the packages that were being used. So we'd build something in our studio, for instance, locally on our kind of laptops. We'd then look to try and deploy it as a package in Data Factory, and the packages wouldn't line up, and it would break, and we'd have to go through this whole quote-unquote translation process to make it work. It was a nightmare. But because everything's now in Databricks, it's all under one roof, and we go from experimentation to testing to dev environment to productionize without having to worry about that. So again, in terms of where we are now, we'll talk a bit about this in a second in a bit more detail. We've deployed 3 AI features this year alone. So starting from scratch, we're able to build stuff rapidly. And where we want to go is using this platform to rapidly iterate and experiment over features. So the migration itself has been really powerful. We have a really, really strong foundation for business intelligence at Thomas. Then ChatGPT happened last year. And I imagine it's affected all of our lives in many, many ways. It hugely affected our life at Thomas because it blew open the doors of what could be done and how we deliver products and value to customers. And so at Thomas, we have concepts that we call big bets, which are things we want to invest in, but we don't have any clear customer directive yet that this is what they want. So for us, looking at ChatGPT, and I'm conscious of the people in this room I'm speaking to, my slightly flippant view on it was people weren't necessarily interested in the technical capabilities of ChatGPT. What they were blown away by was the ability to ask a question in their natural language, so the way they want to word it, and get a ridiculously good answer back. And we thought, how can we do that at Thomas? What capabilities can we do for either internally or for our customers to add that same functionality? So ultimately, what did this mean for us? Users can ask questions about themselves, their colleagues, their team in any way they like. It gives accurate, accessible, actionable answers back quickly. And also it then opens up, because of the natural language interface, can we start to plug into systems that we call in the flow of work? So Microsoft Teams, Slack, your Discord, your Zooms, whatever it is. So we had a very unique problem. So the nature of our content, the nature of Psychometric, for anyone who's done them, the idea is we've got 40 plus years of writing this content. And we write it in a way that we call profile agnostic. The way we write content doesn't really matter or care who you are, but it matters or cares what level of traits you have. So you can see on the right-hand side, I can't get there. pointer. I'm not going to do the pointer. Leave the pointer out. You can see myself and my colleague's profile, and we're different levels of that top trait. So in our content system, there are bits of content that are relevant for my level of the trait and relevant for Sophie's level of the trait. And we store loads of these, so we needed to find a way to get the right content to the right people that help them answer the right question at the right time. So we started this journey about a year ago, and we tried to do it this way. So we tried to do it from an NLP part of speech tagging process. So the idea of saying, if someone asks, I want to motivate Luke, how can I do that? Using NLP to go, okay, well, that's the verb, that's the named entity, pull that out, and then go to a content management system to try and figure that out. This did not work. This was unbelievably difficult. It had so many errors in it, but it opened up a conversation of how we could do this. And at this point, I would like to welcome Mark to the stage. Everyone clap for Mark.
Thank you, Luke. Hi, everyone. My name is Mark. I'm a solutions architect at Databricks over in London. So I've been working with wonderful Dr. Luke for just under a year now. And yeah, the discussion around how can we make our gold mine of years of accumulated psychometric content, highly proprietary, specialized content, how can we make that more accessible to customers, easier to interact with? Right now, we're basically delivering very long reports with high quality content, but it's difficult for customers to get to where they want to get to quicker and faster. And so as we started brainstorming around this idea, one of the three main requirements that surfaced up pretty quickly were that because this is practically medical data, this is psychometrics about individuals, we need total control over what happens to the data. We need visibility into where the data goes, what happens to it, who has access to it. We also need accuracy. We want this to be tailored to the person that is interacting with the data, and we want it to sit on top of our curated custom data that we've built over the years, our gold mine. And one important aspect of this is we need it to be safe. We need to make sure that the right guardrails are around this and that we're able to track what happens to the application. And finally, Thomas is a relatively small data science team at the time, and we didn't want to stretch the team too thin. We want something that we can iterate over quickly in a cost-effective way over time and then scale out. So cost effectiveness.
So just, I was going to say, on those two bits as well, to bring this to life again, the nature of the business of Thomas being psychometrics, there's some people find it a little bit skeptical, they're uncertain about it, they feel a bit vulnerable with it. For us, adding that and then adding a layer of AI on top of it, we knew that it was going to be met with a lot of skepticism unless we did this ethically and safely. So a big part of it for us was we wanted to build a glass box, not a black box. So we wanted to be able to say, we can tell you exactly where AI is being used, for what, where, when, and why, to give our customers confidence. The other bit on the cost-effective part is, remember at the beginning of the talk, I said our CFO didn't like us very much? He still wasn't bought into the AI bit, so we needed something, as Mark's saying, that was we could deliver a proof of concept without absolutely decimating our P&L as a result of that.
Yeah, exactly. So as we started brainstorming around this topic, one tool or one approach that became really relevant was search. Luke basically talked me through the approach that he just mentioned of entity recognition. And one idea that came to mind was, why don't you use semantic search or similarity search? We have a vector database available, check it out. And that was something that really opened the door to interacting with the data in natural language, getting to the data faster, to the content faster, using natural language. But the caveat to that was that the data that was surfaced were static documents or paragraphs of text, but still really moved the needle in the right direction.
As I say, yeah, this approach really helped us change from a very kind of lexical approach to understanding the question to a semantic and meaning-based one, which is really powerful. As Mark was saying, though, the customer disconnect was we were just throwing 3 paragraphs of content at them and going, here you go, that answers your question. and they weren't seeing the way their question lined up with the pieces of content. So that opened up, as I say, the next bit of how do we make this really relevant for them? How do we make it answer their question properly?
And so very naturally, the topic of RAG started to emerge. How can we basically add a layer of intelligence on top of this search experience to make it easier to access and to consume? So for those that maybe aren't that aware of RAG, RAG is one of the main architectures to implement LLM-based applications. The real benefit and the great thing with RAG is that it strikes the right balance between relevance and accuracy and cost effectiveness and modularity. So it's basically using a vector database to enrich your initial prompt. So that's what's happening here. You have a user query. We do a search on a vector database where you have pre-indexed content and continuously are indexing new content into that vector database. You use similarity search to enrich the prompt with the context, and then you send that to an LLM. That LLM will generate a natural language output that you can then expose to the user. And as I said, what was really great with this is the modularity of it. So you can experiment with different models, embedding models for the indexing. You also have flexibility around the prompt engineering aspect. So for different use cases at Thomas, they were able to experiment with prompt engineering to address those. And finally, different LLMs were experimented with, and Thomas and Luke can speak to the different results that they observed there. But really, this was a way to develop directly on the data that was already there, the gold mine at Thomas, with tools that were beginning to really become democratized and open source models. Did you want to add something there? No? Okay. So this was the implementation, and basically you have a number of different endpoints. The first part is indexing your content into the vector index. So Thomas were an existing user of Delta Live tables. That's what's behind the scenes when you index into vector search. And psychologists and the science team at Thomas is continuously developing new content. So having a mechanism to index that into the index, into vector search over time is a very, very handy thing to have. Then you have your different models served on model serving, and again, that's where the modularity comes in very handy. You might want to start small and then scale out with different models, going into the open source space, for example, on Marketplace, and grabbing Llama 2 7B, and then scaling out to larger models was something that's very easy to do. And then finally, being able to expose this application, so the LangChain application that's also hosted on model serving, and embed that into any application that you have, whether that's an existing one. So there is an existing Thomas platform, which Luke will show, but also into the flow of work aspects of different tools that everyone here is using day to day. One important aspect of this, and that touches on the monitoring and safety aspect, is the ability to log everything. So Thomas used inference tables to log the inputs and the outputs and start creating that flywheel of data that RAG allows you to do.
So just to echo this, there's a couple of points why this was really valuable for us. So one was around the models themselves. Because of the federated and kind of foundational model we had, we were, as Mark said, plug in and play with different models. Back when we started this, it was just when Databricks released Dolly. And since then, the world of LLMs has just absolutely exploded. And exactly as Mark said, we're looking at how we scale our LLMs in two ways. So the first way is around the amount of people or the amount of tokens it can process in 1 second. So at the moment, we've got it really low because we've got some private preview stuff going. Then we're looking at how we scale the quality of the LLM itself. So we're just using the 7 billion parameter Llama model, but we're looking at how we bring that out to the 70 billion one, or how we compare it against DBRX or Mixture as well. The other really big part around this was, and why this was valuable for us, and more importantly our customers, when ChatGPT came out last year, one of the big concerns people had was suddenly realizing everything you gave it, it owns. So there was that massive, brilliant scandal, wasn't there, where I think it was Samsung put a load of IP in to go, can you fix some of this code? And OpenAI then owns that IP and other people get it. So everyone we were talking to when we talked about AI at the time was going, but how do you make sure our data is safe and secure? This setup meant that everything was hosted on our cloud server. So we use Azure. Meant everything was being kept in-house. It wasn't going anywhere else. We had complete control over it. And the reason we've highlighted the kind of RAG chain and chat application part is, and we'll show an example of this in a minute, because we have this underpinning architecture, we're able to rapidly iterate and build new AI functionality. So what we're creating are endpoints that have unique prompts designed to address unique use cases. So whether it's the individual, a team, a leader, a manager, a team member interaction, wherever it is, we're able to really quickly iterate around that and deliver stuff at scale and at value to our customers quicker.
So just to recap the main points, right? It was the end-to-end support in a self-contained environment on Databricks. That was a key requirement and a key benefit of implementing this the way we did. Small team and ease of use was important, being able to get up and running with this quickly through things like serverless, through things like having the automatic syncing between the delta tables and vector search really helped accelerate things. Control and safety, basically how does Thomas not get sued, and how does Thomas have oversight over all of the data that goes in and out of the models, inference tables, and system tables, all of the different mechanisms we have of controlling that, and also a range of other benefits that we discussed, right? The modularity, being able to swap in models, auditability, also optionality on cost if you want to experiment, being able to use pay-per-token versus provision throughput, which is more adapted for production use cases. And finally, the URL model serving model or format, which makes it embedded everywhere easily. And so, yeah, this slide is just to show that the components that were used as part of this build-out are a subset of what's available to Thomas today. And that means that it can only, get better. One thing that we know is on the horizon is implementing more of the LLM ops capabilities to strengthen that framework of moving models from staging to prod and tracking experiments, etc.
Yeah, so as I said, to echo Mark's point, I kind of jokingly say this internally at Thomas, which makes people, my chief product officer, a little bit annoyed at me. Our AI at the moment is the worst it's ever going to be. And we're really happy with it, really pleased with it, but it's the worst it's ever going to be because we're going to keep learning and building and iterating and experimenting, learning what works and what delivers value and what levers we can pull. This hopefully gives a great landscape for why my CPO loves me for migrating last year, because we've set ourselves up perfectly to engage with AI rapidly when this kind of problem, this customer use case started to emerge. So I think all of that is quite abstract, unless you have something else to add on this bit.
No, just going to say this has been a super exciting use case to work on, and yeah, it will be exciting to show it in real life.
So I'm going to show you it a little bit in person, because I'm conscious that's all a little bit abstract. I'm also conscious I'm holding the mic with one hand. This is going to be painful watching me type. Please bear with me. So I'm going to very, very quickly. So, no, sorry. So this is, okay. That's going to be my mic stand. So what we've got here, so this is the Thomas platform, and the concept is we have our internal people, it's what we call colleagues. So everyone in our organization signed up, done their assessment, and kind of shared it. So what we're able to do is head over. My internet's not brilliant in this space. Head over to a person. So I look at myself, because that's slightly safer, and you can start to see a bit about me and learn a little bit about me and how I work. The AI bit that's really fun then is we've exposed that vector search and that LLM capability to be able to then allow people to search about their colleagues, or importantly, search about themselves. So I can say, what would annoy Luke most about work? Something we've never written content about before. What this allows us to do then is go away, it goes and finds which answers it thinks or which pieces of content are going to be the most relevant for it, passes it back through the LLM and summarizes it. So I'm likely to be annoyed by slow-paced work, requires meticulous eye for detail, value freedom and autonomy around that. That's 100% true, by the way. Hopefully what you saw by this migration is I love ripping things apart and rebuilding them and moving quite quickly for that. So let's see, hopefully you can see a bit of a use case around this. I'm going to show you another use case really quickly to give you an example of how different we can make this really, really quickly, but using the same model. So we have a concept of teams. So what we'll do is I have put me and all of my data science team together in a profile to learn a bit about ourselves. So what we're going to do is run a session. I'm going to do one I've created earlier. So I've created a session which is all around team session test, which is a great name, making work more enjoyable, time for an hour, last day. So let's run this session. What it will do, give me a bit of insight what to do and what to prep before the session. Get a couple of icebreakers, what can me and my team get to do, and this is where the AI bit comes in. So what this endpoint does is it looks at the profile of the team, takes the context of the situation, so what did I say? I wanted to make work more enjoyable, and it then creates 3 facilitated questions that are personalized to this team's profile and the objective we're trying to do, so that our team can then use this to develop and ultimately facilitate the session to make work more enjoyable. So hopefully, that gives a couple of examples in terms of what we can do rapidly around this. Thank you, Mark. In terms of what's next for us. So the next bit is expanding on our guardrails. So we've talked a little about how safety is really important for us. At the moment, we're seeing really powerful guardrails in the LLMs themselves, but we know that people are slightly mischievous at work and probably want to ask slightly interesting questions. So we're looking to build additional layers into that are context specific to be able to get that. We want to do some A/B experiments. For us, the customer is key. We want to deliver value for them. So this is all about which LLMs, which AI functionality allows us to be able to do that quickest, which is most adaptable to us and our prompts and is able to give the best experience. And finally, from an LLM ops perspective, so as Mark said earlier, we need to build a pipeline that allows us to update content and automate that into updating our vector index so that our productionized features get the latest content quickest. And with that, we have a bit of time we've rushed through. If anyone would like to help us test out our AI, it is in private preview at the moment. If you'd like to go to that QR code and sign up, we'd love to get you involved with it because it's new for us, experimental. A big part of this is we want people to come in and help us break it, help us teach us what gives value, what doesn't give value. But yeah, all that's left to say is thank you so much for coming today. We'll be here for ask questions, but otherwise we've got some time for questions now.